All right, welcome in. Here we go. Back-to-back episodes, baby. Season 3, Episode 4. Lots to talk about today on the Hockey Talk Show, whether you're joining us on Facebook, YouTube, or via the podcast. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk some hockey with us right here on the Hockey Talk Show, the only live two-way hockey talk show on the interwebs. That's right. Can't talk back and forth with any other hockey talk show but this one right here. Any other hockey podcast, only this one. Thanks so much for being along with us. Evander Kane suspended 3 games to start the 1920 season. We'll talk about what happened with Evander Kane, what you guys think on that. We'll get into that on this episode. Plus, some of the storylines that we're going to see here moving into this season, some predictions. This is your official season preview show, so if you're watching live with us right now on Facebook or YouTube, let me know what you think about your team and where you guys are finishing for this fresh new season. Oh, so excited. So exciting. Everybody's in first place tonight. This is so great. Kane suspended. Season preview. We will also take a look back at last season's Stanley Cup champions, the St. Louis Blues. They just got their Stanley Cup rings. They are sweet. We will break those down. So much more to talk about. Canucks and Maple Leafs captains expected to be named. Lee Stepniak walks away from the game. Your questions and comments, of course, right here on this episode. Season 3, Episode 4, Hockey Talk Show. Let's go. All right, Facebook or YouTube, make sure you guys hit the thumbs up and share this post if you can across your social media pages. Let's hop right into talking about Evander Kane, suspended for 3 games without pay for violating Rule 40.4, physical abuse of the officials in a preseason game against the Vegas Golden Knights on Sunday. The National Hockey League made this announcement today. The incident occurred in the third period. Kane was assessed a game misconduct for abuse of officials under terms of the collective bargaining agreement. And based on his salary, he's going to lose just about $113,000. The money will go into the player's emergency fund. That's a hell of a payday to lose there for sure. That's not an easy pill to swallow, no matter who you are. So Kane is out. I wanted to touch upon this in the last episode, and we didn't really get to it. But Evander Kane and Tom Wilson, in both of their last preseason games, both got game misconducts. Now, Kane's worse than Wilson because Kane actually touched a referee. That's a no-no. You can't do that. That's why he gets the 3 games. By the way, 3 games automatic. This doesn't go to player safety for review. He is they write down in the game log, abusive official, game misconduct. You are automatically suspended. It just depends on how many games, and that's not up to the players, the personnel department for that. That's just an automatic. So 3 games, I think, very appropriate. The unfortunate thing is 2 out of those 3 games is against the Vegas Golden Knights. And as we've seen here lately with the San Jose Sharks, that Golden Knights-Sharks rivalry is pretty intense. I mean, they were whacking at each other like crazy during a preseason game. That caused this all to begin with. So Kane's out for 3 games. Tom Wilson doesn't get suspended, but he was essentially looking to take on the entire Carolina Hurricanes team, which was amazing to me. Look, I love the intensity. I love the roughness in the game. I love the fighting. But if I'm either of their coaches, I am sitting them down and screaming at them right in the face after these games going, what are you doing? What are you doing? These are preseason games. They mean nothing. They mean nothing. And now we're going to lose you for 3 games and 2 pretty important games against our fresh rivals, the Vegas Golden Knights. Bad move on the part of Evander Kane. Totally disappointed in him on that maneuver here. Rob, what's up on the YouTube channel? AK, how are you? Can a ref get suspended? You know what, AK, referees can get suspended. They typically do not. But I will say, the referee was a little harsh on Evander Kane. If you go back and you look at that clip, we won't show it here because then the NHL, yells at us for doing that. We're not paying the NHL to show their highlights. but I will show you something in a little bit that hopefully we won't get in trouble for. Yeah, if you look at that game, the referee was pretty intensely involved with Evander Kane. I thought maybe a smidge too much. And, when you look at the play, the referee kind of grabs Kane. Kane gets turned around and he kind of grabs Kane, and Kane turns around and snaps at him. And I think that's where the game misconduct comes in. Ironically, there was also a moment before that where he's trying to slash Derek Engeland, who he was having the scrum with, and I think he caught the referee pretty good on the hip. Unintentional, but still caught him there. So there was that, and then there was the turnaround, and he shoves the referee. Now, I don't know if he thought that was Derek Engeland on his back or whatever, but I thought the referee actually went a little too far in all this. That being said, you can't touch a referee ever, ever, ever. You got to set a precedent, especially every season. So he gets the gate, 3 games, very deserving. But I did think the referee was a little out of control there. I did. Let's talk about the St. Louis Blues, defending Stanley Cup champions. I find it fascinating that this team went from last place in January of last year to first place, to winning the Stanley Cup championship, and absolutely nobody is picking them to repeat. I mean, I'm just saying, I'm not picking them to repeat either. I'm not stupid, but I'm just saying, you would think that there would be somebody out there that was kind of crazy enough to be like, who's going to do really well this season is those St. Louis Blues. Let's take a look, and if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure you guys rate and review, but I apologize. This is quite the visual here as we are taking a look at this year's Stanley Cup championship rings, and I must say, these things are gorgeous. Just gorgeous. Just quickly looking at all the Stanley Cup championship rings we've seen in the last couple of years, I don't know if it gets any better than the St. Louis Blues. Now, I don't know if I'm partial because I do enjoy the sapphire, and they made the Blues logo out of sapphire, but these things are real pretty. I mean, really, really pretty. And let's break down a couple of things in here. Let's take a look. First of all, they put 16 blue sapphires, and we're taking a look on the screen here. They put 16 blue sapphires in the Blues logo. So it took 16 blue sapphires to make that St. Louis Blues logo, and that represents the 16 victories it takes to win the Stanley Cup championship. In the actual Stanley Cup itself, which is behind the Blues logo, there are 75 diamonds in that make that Stanley Cup up. That represents all 75 goals the St. Louis Blues scored to win the Stanley Cup. So that's pretty sweet right there. You can only see the one side on this one here, which is, I thought, a really nice job on the part of the Blues to include their fans in the ring. I don't know if I've ever seen that before. That's kind of crazy, but you can see a St. Louis Blues player hoisting the cup up, and very clearly the fans all etched into this white gold right behind them. I mean, that's just really pretty. Ryan O'Reilly's name is on the side right there, and his number in diamonds as well. You can kind of see here, let's take the Hockey Talk Show watermark off the screen so you guys can see the bottom. You can kind of see here there's a little band going around the absolute bottom of the ring. That says Play Gloria, which was their Stanley Cup championship song all the way through. Inside the ring, which you can't see here, they etch the results of every single playoff round. That's pretty much a standard thing. And they put the player's signature inside the ring as well, along with a St. Louis Blues logo. I'm not sure if I've ever seen that before, with the player's signature in there, but I thought that was pretty cool. And on the other side of the ring, which you can't see, they have the St. Louis Arch, which has 16 diamonds in it as well to represent the postseason victories. And they have some sheet music going. Actually, I can give you a view of that here. Let's see. There it is right there. You can kind of see it on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. It's a little blurry. I apologize for that. But you can see the St. Louis Blues, the St. Louis Arch, and then there's this music note kind of rippling through the arch, and that's the sheet music depicting when the Blues go marching in. So that's actual sheet music, which is pretty cool there. The only thing they really missed for me is this diamonds and sapphires combining to illustrate the crowd at a celebration. That's kind of dumb to me. I don't really get that. That's the only miss on this ring. But, I mean, other than that, I mean, you're talking about an absolute out-of-the-park home run with how gorgeous this ring looks for the St. Louis Blues. So congratulations once again, and finally, for one last time on this show at least, to the St. Louis Blues on winning the Stanley Cup championship last season. They did a tremendous job on making those rings look really, really sweet. But we move on from them, and we take a look at what we're heading into here in this 2019-2020 season. I'm going to do a little prediction here and talk a little prediction. We're going to talk about more than predictions on where I think a lot of these teams are going to finish. I want to talk about some of the storylines that we're going to be following here as we get into this season here. You know, I think there's a lot of interesting tales, a lot of question marks, a lot of new faces and new places, new general managers, new coaches. You know, there was a lot of good UFA movement in the offseason. There wasn't as much RFA movement in the offseason, but there's a lot of things to look forward to and to keep track of. So we are definitely going to do that. Let's start with the waiver wire. We talked about this yesterday on the show. I was pretty surprised to see that we only had 2 waiver claims today, Dahlstrom to Winnipeg and Comrie to Arizona. That's surprising to me because I mentioned Comrie, but outside of Comrie, I mentioned, you know, Thomas Hickey. We mentioned Joshua Hosang. We mentioned Daniel Sprong, some of the guys I thought were potentially good to go other places, good to claim. But we then talked about some of the things that maybe could stop teams from claiming them. And it looks like that all seemed to fall into place. A lot of teams don't have the cap space was one reason. With Joshua Hosang, it was his attitude. So he'll go down to Bridgeport, see if they can continue working on his game. I feel like this is basically it for Joshua Hosang. He might wind up signing somewhere in the offseason. He's only got 1 year on his deal here, but I don't know if the Islanders bring him back next season. I'm not sure if it's really worth it for them anymore. Thomas Hickey, we talked about being better than a lot of 5th and 6th defensemen in the league, but not really going because he's got a $2.5 million contract for the next 3 seasons. So we said this could be a reason why teams don't take a shot at him, and that clearly seems to be why. And we talked about the Maple Leafs, who need that goaltending help, need that goaltending depth, need a really good backup instead of Michael Hutchinson. Casey DeSmith goes right through waivers. I'm surprised Comrie got picked up over Smith. That's shocking to me. Now, Arizona, it looks like they want to have some depth there. As we said, Eric Comrie, at one point or another, it hasn't translated in the few NHL games he's played. His ceiling is through the roof. Highly touted prospect, hasn't converted yet, always still a possibility. It looks like it'll be a long-term project for Arizona over there. But the fact of the matter is, Casey DeSmith, a better goaltender right now, and a lot of teams, especially the Toronto Maple Leafs that need that backup goaltending help, don't take a chance on him. I am shocked. I am utterly, utterly shocked. Especially when you look at Toronto. Now, I don't know about the logistics of all of this. I haven't been able to find the information, but I know Toronto is trying to hold themselves as high to the cap ceiling as they can because they're going to claim LTIR relief. Basically, they have a bunch of contracts, the Nathan Horton contract. They have a few contracts where they can get LT long-term injury relief where they'll take some money off the cap. They could essentially go over the cap because of those contracts. So I know that they want to be as close to the top as possible to get the maximum amount of relief there. That's essentially why they're hanging on to Timothy Liljegren. I think I've heard several ways that people pronounce that. And then they're going to wind up sending him down too. I don't know why you don't just drop him and go out and claim Casey DeSmith. I don't know why that wasn't done. A little bit of a discrepancy there in salary. Maybe they just couldn't figure out a way to keep that 1.5 there. I'm not really sure what the reasons were, but I think that, you know, Kyle Dubas has done some suspect things, and one of his big screw-ups last year was having faith in Garrett Sparks before he was really ready to face the NHL, and letting Curtis McElhinney go and watching Curtis take the Carolina Hurricanes, or at least assist in taking the Carolina Hurricanes all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. I mean, that was a bad move for Dubas and a bad look all around. And now you have a chance to just pick up a guy off of waivers for nothing, and you can't make it work. Not a good look for the Toronto Maple Leafs in that aspect. But I'm surprised. A lot of teams, Winnipeg didn't go out there and claim anybody else. They have the space to do so. I'm just a little surprised that, we didn't see some more movement there on the waiver wire. That was a bit surprising to me. Sparky was a flop, says Eddie. Rob writes in, who is willing to take Jack Johnson? Again, I don't know. I don't really know. I don't know. I feel like there was a little bit of a thing there with him and Columbus, but then there was like this idea that he might go back for a little while. I think there was some issues with Tortorella. I really don't remember what the thing was with him and Columbus, but I felt like after there was this thing there that it got resolved, or there was no animosity. I don't really know. I'm not really entirely sure. But yeah, Jack Johnson's on the rumor mill. Let's go over a couple other trade rumors here. Matt Larkin over at the Hockey News weighed in on the trade rumors swirling around the Montreal Canadiens. I know a bunch of people asked me about some trade rumors yesterday. We had this question come up about Jonathan Drouin. Matt Larkin is saying poor performance in the preseason game sparked speculation, prompting Canadiens general manager Marc Bergevin to deny Drouin was on the block. Larkin noted a report about Drouin's name being out there on the trade block, but his sources claim otherwise. Larkin acknowledged that the Canadiens could use a mobile top four defenseman. Whenever you hear mobile top four defenseman, that is always followed by Nick Leddy of the New York Islanders. And Matt Larkin does point out Nick Leddy of the New York Islanders as one option. However, the Habs don't have a surplus of wingers to spare. Again, Thomas Hickey is not Nick Leddy, but when you're paying nothing to get him, he certainly is a good alternative. He is a good mobile defenseman. He's a 5'6" guy. He is. I'm not trying to, prop him up to be more than anything else, but he's mobile. He can do it, and he doesn't cost anything. I don't buy these Drouin trade rumors. I mean, I think they might be disappointed in him. I think maybe he's not starting off in camp the way they want him to, but I just don't really buy it. I'm not really buying it here. Let's see. We have an update on Julius Honka as the Dallas Stars are reportedly seeking a second-round pick or a third-round pick for Julius Honka. He's 23 years old. He's an RFA. He's skating in Finland right now, awaiting a trade. This is the only RFA left from the offseason that hasn't been signed. He demanded a trade earlier in the summertime. We're just kind of waiting to see what happens there with him. A lot of surprise that Daniel Sprong couldn't get claimed. There was some speculation from Mike Harrington of the Buffalo News that said the 22-year-old who tallied 14 goals in 47 games with the Ducks last season would be a nice fit with the Buffalo Sabres. He does have a relationship with Jason Botterill, who was an assistant GM with Pittsburgh at the time that the Penguins drafted him. But he goes and clears waivers, as we said there. So, again, just 2 waiver claims from yesterday and not a lot of movement. I'm pretty surprised. Also, on yesterday's show, we teased this up at the top, and then we never got to it. But I want to go back and touch 2 minutes on the Phil Kessel, Evgeny Malkin trade dispute, because we talked about this earlier when it happened. And now we seem to have a little bit more clarification on it, that Evgeny Malkin said to Pittsburgh, look, either Phil or I go. I'm not playing with Phil anymore. And supposedly, as we're learning now through some interviews that Evgeny Malkin has been doing, that turned out to be not true. That Evgeny Malkin went to the Penguins front office and said, I can't play with Phil anymore. He didn't ask that Phil be traded. He just asked that Phil not be on his line. So the speculation and the story now is, did Evgeny Malkin kind of hint like, hey, get rid of this guy? Or did he just say, I just don't want to play with Phil anymore? Like, did he say, I don't want to play with Phil anymore? And Jim Rutherford just interpreted that as, Well, okay, then I got to trade Phil? Or did he just say, I just don't want to play with Phil anymore, just get me off his line, and Jimmy Rutherford just went out and took the opportunity to get rid of Phil Kessel? I'm not sure. I know Phil Kessel can be pretty temperamental. I know that, things were not great between Mike Sullivan. Could bring a return back, roll our dice with Galchenyuk and see what happens there. And that'll be better than just not having, Evgeny Malkin and Phil Kessel and Mike Sullivan all unhappy with each other. I don't really know. But now the story is being told that it wasn't that, or at least Evgeny Malkin is claiming now, hey, I didn't go in there and say either trade me or trade him. I mean, that story does make a lot of sense, seeing that Evgeny Malkin was rumored to be on the trading block early on in the offseason. If you guys remember that, it does make a lot of sense. And then people started talking about Phil, and that it was kind of like those two, and who do you make a switch there to kind of jumpstart the Penguins? But he's basically now saying, I just said I don't want to play with him anymore. I didn't say he needed to be traded. So we'll see what happens there. Metal Mike, Carter Hart has a lot on his shoulders. Yeah, I watched the first episode of Behind the Glass last night on the NHL Network. I actually watched it on YouTube. I don't know if you guys have seen this show, but it's basically the Hard Knocks for the NHL. A quick note on that. They follow the Philadelphia Flyers this time around. I like the show. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to watch all the episodes. To me, there's no crazy storylines. I mean, they're trying to tease this. Will Chris Stewart make the team narrative? There's no really good behind the scenes stuff. There's no juicy behind the scenes stuff, I should say. But there's fun behind the scenes stuff. I'm going to continue to watch the rest of the episodes and see what's what there. But they did show Carter Hart, in the first episode, and you look at these guys and they're young, and you watch the games and everything, and you can't really see their faces, but like I watch all the interviews, I watch all the post-game stuff, I watch a lot of stuff. But you don't really, it takes a show like Behind the Glass when you watch Carter Hart go to the supermarket and sit there and he's picking out chicken cutlets and feeling tomatoes and picking out corn and stuff, that you look at this guy and you go, my God, this guy's 10 years old. Like, he's a little kid. He looks like a little kid. It's crazy to think that essentially their whole franchise is resting on the shoulders of this young goalie. But God bless him, man. He was, he showed some moxie last season, and I think he's going to be, pretty good for the Philadelphia Flyers this season. I don't know really what the Philadelphia Flyers have, but I love Alain Vigneault. He is no doubt one of the great coaches in the game. I got hammered on this show for loving him all through the year that he was fired and shortly thereafter. But I don't care what anybody says or what I get criticized for. I will continue to love AV. I think he's a phenomenal coach, and I think he's going to do really well there. No doubt about it. They're overpaying Hayes. No doubt about it. But Hayes is a great player. He slots in there nicely. Nice substitution for Simmons. They got some grit on the lower end. They got some young guys that are looking to take a chance here, and they got Claude Giroux, and they've got, Jacob Voracek, and they got some good guys. Philly is going to be fun to watch. I'm not sure if they make the playoffs, but they are definitely going to be fun to watch. Froze, do you think Capo will come through during the actual season with Fox? Do I think they'll both be good? Yeah, I do. I think the Rangers are going to be really good. As we talked about on yesterday's episode, I think I had to kind of calm down Ranger fans a little bit. Maybe fans are getting a little too ahead of themselves and a little too hyped. We took a look at the Rangers roster yesterday. First line, great. Second line, pretty interesting, except for Ryan Strome. Third line gets weak. Fourth line, not really much there to report. And their defense is good, but again, Fox is young. Can he handle the load? But just like I look at the Montreal Canadiens and I say, I'm not all impressed with their team. But when you have a world-class goaltender behind you, you can make some moves. You can make some noise. And that certainly is going to be the case for the New York Rangers. Like, Adam Fox, he could maybe make a couple of mistakes because Henrik Lundqvist is going to bail him out. You know what I mean? So I think that the Rangers are going to be good. I think they're going to be exciting to watch. I think it's going to be a great season for Ranger fans. But I do think that, them making a playoff spot is not an absolute. They could. It depends on Henrik, I think, but it's not an absolute. AK says that Malkin wanted Kessel gone. I don't blame him. Kessel is difficult to deal with. Kessel's not an easy guy to deal with. He's not your run-of-the-mill guy. I think he's liked and beloved in most locker rooms, but he can be abrasive, and he's not your typical, he's not your typical hockey player who just sits there and goes, "Oh, I'm really excited to be here. What do you think about making the team? I'm really excited. What do you think about playing in this spot? Oh, I'm really excited to be here." Are you excited? Because I can't tell if you're excited or you're worried about paying a late fee at the library. I'm not entirely sure what it is. Because when I get excited, I start yelling and my hands move a lot. That might just be because I'm Italian. I'm not sure. But when I show excitement, you can basically read it on my face. With a hockey player, you don't know if he's telling you his mom just died or he's excited that he scored the game-winning goal. You can't. It's the same facial expression. And Phil's not like that. Phil gets a little in there, Phil's a little emotional. So a lot of teammates can't really handle that. Thoughts on Lou's Trott's praise of Dal Cole and starting him on the second line and second power play? I have been very careful not to criticize Barry Trotz and Lou Lamoriello. I have not really disagreed with a lot of their moves. I don't get the love affair with Michael Dal Cole. I get the excitement of him when he was first drafted. I thought that Joshua Ho-Sang is a far better skilled player. I don't think anybody's disputing that. But I watched Dal Cole in the games last season, and he looked lost. And he looked afraid to touch the puck. And we already have Josh Bailey finally getting out of that, finally getting out of that phase. I don't want to sit there and watch another player doing the exact same thing. So I don't get the praise for Dal Cole. Everybody was all over this Koiva kid, and that has seemed to subside. I actually was pretty impressed with Jobst. I think he'll make an appearance in this season at some point. He had good skill, he had finish, and he found the puck really well. I don't get Dal Cole. I really, really don't. Now, maybe they're seeing some things that I'm not seeing in some of these preseason games. Maybe they're seeing some things in practice. I just feel like the first time that kid gets hit, he just shrinks into his little shell. We'll have to wait and see. Cackle will bust harder than Nolan Patrick. Well, I think Nolan Patrick's hurt to start the season. Is it true that Crosby told the Pens not even to think about trading Malkin? That is absolutely 1,000% true. And he's not wrong. He's not wrong. That's the combo, 87 and 71. I mean, we talked about this yesterday on the show. We're sitting here looking at Crosby and Malkin, arguably the best 1-2 punch this game has ever seen. I mean, ever. I mean, wouldn't you put them... I still feel like Wayne Gretzky's the greatest player of all time, but I think I might pick Crosby Malkin over Gretzky Messier. I mean, it's close. You can't argue with the Stanley Cup championships. Obviously, Messier and Gretzky won more, but I mean, I don't know. If I'm starting a team right now, I would go with 71-87 over 99-11. So, the fact that Crosby went in and said, just don't think about trading Malkin, I think speaks volumes. And I don't disagree with him. I mean, he's sticking up for his guy. And let's not forget that that's been a tough relationship all the way through. They both came into the league at the same time. Crosby got the C, Malkin got the A. Crosby and Malkin both like to walk onto the ice last. They had a fight about that. You know what I mean? Like, let's not forget, like, before they won championships, it was not all smooth sailing between Crosby and Malkin. I mean, I think they're tight-knit now. That's what championships will do for you. But it wasn't always totally smooth. So those guys have been through the battle together for sure. For sure. Thoughts on the Caps putting Juice on waivers? Are their defense too competitive for him? I was very surprised to see him on waivers. I mean, they loved this guy last season. Loved him. A lot of talk about him being an up-and-comer, taking on bigger roles, and then all of a sudden, boom, find yourself on waivers. Lucas, great question. Yeah, I mean, I don't really, out of all the teams that are coming out of the East, you know, if you look at the top, if you have to pick who's going to finish on top of both divisions, who's not picking Tampa, Washington? I mean, who's not picking them? They are the two most absolute certainties. Like, there's no way. Like, who makes the playoffs? We can flip a coin and we can argue about that for hours. Who finishes atop those divisions? I mean, it's Washington, Tampa. You know, it just is. And I mean, as good as Boston is, as much as Toronto thinks that they're going to be challenging for a playoff spot, I feel like it's going to finish Tampa, Boston, Toronto again. You know, but yeah, I mean, look, Orlov is back. Gudis is in there. I don't totally love the defense of the Caps, but I do love Carlson, and I do, despite the fact that he hasn't really been as great as he's been, I do love Holtby. You know, I mean, again, not to dip back into my Carey Price, Henrik Lundqvist spiel here, but, yeah, Holtby not as good as those two, but he's got a hell of a lot more to work with in front of him. Do you know what I mean? So it's crazy. It's crazy to think that. I don't want to ignore Facebook here. Lots of good questions. Steven, be honest. How do you think the Avs will do this season? How far do you think we'll go? They'll go. We'll go or they'll go? They'll go. I like the Avs. You go in here and you bring in Mikko Rantanen, you lock him up. Joe Sakic has been building something here for quite some time. He's been shrewd when it's come to some of his decisions. He's had to make some goalie decisions early on. They have a lot of cap space still. There's a lot of flexibility there. They could always add in the middle of the season if they have to. Landeskog and some of their forwards and how committed they've been, and some of the arguments and things of that nature. We've seen all that stuff from this team in the past, but I mean, McKinnon, Landeskog, Rantanen. Are we not talking about maybe the best line coming out of the West? I mean, you could argue with Calgary, and you could make some arguments there, but that's a pretty damn good line. I love the acquisition of Kadri, putting him with Jost. Donskoy, I think, is as good of a third line player as you can get. I like Pierre-Edouard Bellemare on the fourth line there. Gerard's got another season under his belt. Cale Makar should take a big step this year. A lot of love and praise for number 8 there. Philip Grubauer should settle into his role. I think the Colorado Avalanche have a good chance to go pretty far. I think the Colorado Avalanche have a great chance to go far. Here's the problem, though. I mean, that Central Division is going to be pretty difficult. You know what I mean? Like, pretty difficult. Like, I love the additions that Dallas made. Minnesota, a little bit of a wild card, but they're always in it. Nashville's good. St. Louis is defending Stanley Cup champions. Winnipeg's got some question marks on the back end. That Central Division is tough. I feel like the Pacific Division is maybe a little bit more easier. You kind of have a feeling of who's going to rise to the top. Vegas is going to be there. San Jose is probably going to be there. Maybe it's Edmonton. Maybe it's Calgary in that third, fourth spot. Arizona's going to be there, right? LA, Anaheim, they're probably going to finish towards the bottom. Vancouver might be able to get in there and challenge a bit. But to me, that division is a little bit more open, whereas you got St. Louis, Nashville, Dallas, Colorado, Winnipeg, and Chicago is still really good despite, aging and everything else like that. Bringing in Robin Leonard to fill their goaltending gaps, to see where Corey Crawford is and how many games he can play. They're really good this year. That Central Division might be the best division in the game right now. I mean, between the Central and the Atlantic, those are some pretty, pretty tight divisions. You know what I mean? So I think Colorado's going to be great this year. I think Joe Sakic has been steadfast in building that franchise up slowly but surely. He's locking up his young talent. I think that Nathan McKinnon is when is he an RFA? He's coming up on RFA status pretty soon, I believe. Let's check Colorado, who again, you got to be amazed. Out of all the teams that have a lot of cap space, Colorado's sitting right now with $6.5 million, and you're looking at maybe one of the top teams to finish in their division. I mean, not a lot of teams can say that they have that much cap space and be picked to get there. Nathan McKinnon. Oh, McKinnon is up in 23-24. Landeskog is up in 21-22. Again, Kadri is a great second line center. I love his game. He did everything that was asked of him in Toronto when Tavares got added, moving down to a third line center role, knowing that he was going to be making, scoring less points. He never complained. Lost his head. Can't argue with that in the playoffs, but he had a pretty good season the last couple of years. He's really grown into a great second line centerman. So, I think Colorado is completely legit. Let's see here. Islanders will be better this year. Noah Dobson is a stud. Michael Dal Cole is rising late. I like Varley over Leonard, says real Dal Cole, 34 goals. 34 points, I think he meant to say. 18 goals, 16 assists last year in the AHL. Real thinks I'm dead wrong about Dal Cole. Kid's only 23. Power forwards rise late at times. I can't sit here and get impressed about 18 goals in the American Hockey League. I'm sorry. It doesn't impress me. I can't do it. I can't get impressed over 34 points in the AHL. I mean, this guy was projected to be a top 6 forward. You should be scoring 50, 60, 70 points if that's the case in the American Hockey League. I mean, come on. And there's a lot of guys that do it well in the AHL and then they come up here and they can't. And to me, he's one of those guys. Now, maybe he's grown and matured and maybe he's going to feel a little bit better having a couple more games under his belt last season. I'll yield to that for sure. But I have not seen anything impressive about this kid. And it's the one area that I really don't get where Trotz and Lou are going. But I have full faith in both of them. I mean, their record's pretty damn good. Dallas has a shot at the cup. I like the additions of Joe Pavelski in Dallas. I don't care about Julius Honka, to be honest with you. I think Dallas is going to make some noise for sure. I actually like the Dallas Stars in a big way. And again, it's another one of those things where that Central Division is gunked up. It is gunked up. There's a lot. You're going to have... I think that the 2 wild cards are going to come from the Central Division. Let's just put it that way. I think that there's a good chance the two, depending on what Edmonton and Calgary do, I think there's a good, if Edmonton stumbles again, God love them. But if Edmonton stumbles out of the gate or whatever the case may be, I think you can have a scenario where both wild card teams come out of the Central Division. I like Joe Pavelski. I like the addition in a major way. I think Dallas has been poised to do something great for a while. If they're going to step up, this is going to be their year for sure. Lucas, how about the Devils? They obviously got some new interesting names like Gusev, PK, and Hughes, but what about Boquist? Is he God to go to the NHL, only scoring 2 goals in the preseason? I like Boquist. I like PK. I like Gusev. Here's the difference for me, and this is going to be maybe the storyline to follow in the NHL 2019-2020 season. What happens with Taylor Hall? And I don't care how much you try and poo-poo this and how much you try and minimalize press questions. Will Taylor Hall resign? Will Taylor Hall come back? Taylor Hall free agency is going to be the main driving force on this team all season long. The difference here, for me at least, you watch the John Tavares situation, the Islanders did nothing to convince John to stay. They made 0 acquisitions, very few moves prior to the season where he was heading into free agency, and a big fat 0 moves at the trade deadline, and it was a absolute mistake. It was a big, fat mistake. Besides having a coach that is a great person and a great hockey guy and not qualified to coach an NHL team, and a general manager who should have been fired at least 3 seasons prior to the time that he actually did get fired. Besides those, not adding to the Islanders was a big mistake. And Ray Shero was not going to make that same mistake. He sees Taylor Hall going into the final year of his contract, and what does he do? He goes out and makes the trade for PK Subban. He adds Wayne Simmons in free agency. He drafts Jack Hughes. He goes out and gets Gusev. He doesn't sit idly by. He goes out and gets one of the more highly touted prospects coming from Russia via the Vegas Golden Knights, who couldn't get a deal done over there, and then signs him long term. You know, he's really refaced this team pretty quickly. Again, I put the Devils to finish over the Rangers here, and I think they're going to have a good year. Question mark in the net, but I like Corey Schneider. I think he rebounds. He's a good goaltender for sure. Absolutely for sure. JDAC says this is the Canucks year. Well, the Canucks are expected to name a captain before puck drops tomorrow night. Bo Horvat is believed to be the leading contender to fill the C role ever since Henrik Lundqvist left. I think it would be a good choice. Even being in consideration, Bo says, is quite humbling. Even that is a humbling thing a captain would say. So I like that. I like the Canucks and what they're building over there. I think they're doing a good thing. I don't know if they're a shoo-in for the playoffs. I got to watch them over the first 10 games or so. Again, just like we did last season, we'll make our predictions here on this show. But really, 10, 15, 20 games in, we're going to sit down and we're going to point to who we think is going to make it over the long haul. Metal Mike says Panthers are going to be a surprise team. Coach Q, Bobrovsky. I don't think enough people are giving the Panthers the credit that they deserve. Right? They went in and they filled some of the needs that they needed to fill. They addressed all their problem areas. I love that forward core. I love the speed of this team. My hope is that Coach Q comes in and is able to extract more out of them. Hopefully everybody that's there gets into play his sort of style. But Huberdeau, Barkov, Trocheck, Connolly, Hoffman, if his fiance/wife, partner, or whatever, can keep her trap shut and not cause issues in the locker room. I love all of them. They add Noel Acari. I love that for a bottom 6 move. They got Vetrano down there on the third line right now. Ekblad, Matheson, Yandel, Brown, Strawman. They got a great defense. And they got Sergei Bobrovsky, and they got Coach Q. I mean, what more can you ask for? If you're the Florida Panthers, you got to be damn excited because a lot of people are expecting you to step up this year, and me included. I think it's the year for the Florida Panthers that they'll be challenging for a playoff spot for sure. For sure they'll be in that mix. Again, they're in a division with Boston, with Toronto, with Tampa, so it's going to be tight. And it's going to be tough. They're not at that level yet, but they're pretty much there. I think they're obviously better than Ottawa. I think that Florida is better than Montreal, and I think that they're better than Detroit. So they'll be hanging around that 4 spot for sure in that division. If it's good enough to take, a playoff spot, we'll have to wait and see because we don't really know what's coming out of the Metro. I think Carolina is going to be pretty good this year. The more and more I think about them, I'm kind of coming around to them being really good, although Joel Edmondson in his debut with the Carolina Hurricanes, that obviously did not go as well. Let's take a look at my man, Joel Edmondson, coming out of the ice here. Watch this. Here comes Joel. Oh, I'm nervous to be on my new team. I did not take my skate guards off. Oh, boy, is that a bit of an embarrassment right there. Never want to see that. You never want to see that. Welcome to Carolina, Joel. Make sure you take your stupid skate guards off, my man. I like Carolina and their defense, though. I think, you You lose Justin Falk, but you add some good pieces in the interim. Rod Brindamore shows that he's a motivating type of coach. So, I like them a lot. I like Washington. I think the Islanders, there's no reason to second guess them, and it's pretty amazing to watch everybody second guess them again. It really, really is. But I don't see a sophomore slump from Barry Trotz whatsoever. He's just not the kind of guy that'll go ahead and do that. But I do think that the Islanders need to rid themselves of Andrew Ladd. They need to get out of that contract pretty quickly here. Let's see. Vincent predicts Caps, Pittsburgh, and Columbus to finish 1, 2, and 3. That is a bold prediction I'm not comfortable going along with. I don't know about the Blue Jackets finishing third, but I like the optimism. I do like the optimism. Let's see here. Lots of great comments, guys. I really appreciate it. Seattle's coming. Yeah. We got a lot of stuff to look forward to. I was reading an interview with Gary Bettman from earlier today because, the beginning of the season, the commissioner will go around and he'll do some interviews and such. And when Gary Bettman took over the National Hockey League, their revenue was around $400 million. $400 million was the revenue for the entire league. Last season, they brought in north of $5 billion. So we can boo him all we want, and I think even he enjoys it at this point, but the man has done a phenomenal job. A phenomenal job. All right, let's take a look at some storylines. Let's take a look at the Minnesota Wild. Jared Spurgeon gets signed to a long-term contract here as Bill Guerin comes in as new general manager. I like the move. I like Bill Guerin a lot. The only thing I didn't like about this, and you can go back to this episode of the Hockey Talk Show if you're a Minnesota Wild fan, is that Minnesota Wild ownership came out and said, hey, we made a mistake signing a first-year general manager. We need to go out and get somebody with experience. And then they went out and signed a first-year general manager in Bill Guerin. Okay? Now, I like Bill Guerin a lot. And I think he'll be well, and I don't think he's going to get fired after 1 year. But it'll be interesting to see where the Minnesota Wild are because I think they're at that pressure point where, okay, where do we go here? What are we doing? Are we sticking with who we have, or are we going to, give our new general manager the chance to head into a rebuild? Tom Dundon with the Carolina Hurricanes is always a big question mark, and that's my big thing. I believe in Rod Brindamore as a coach. I like the motivating coach. I like giving Jordan Stahl the C. But Tom Dundon, he essentially let Don Waddell go without a contract. And then Waddell was like, fine, I'm going to go interview for the Minnesota job. And then he was like, okay, I'll give you a raise. That's no way to treat a general manager, who, by the way, was a finalist for GM of the Year. He let Sebastian Aho sign an offer sheet. I don't love that. But they seem to be taking this very stats-driven approach down there in Carolina, where they go out and they bring in Jay Gardner, they bring in Eric Holla and Ryan Dzingel, who stats-wise look really good, are affordable, have a high output for what they cost. And it seems like they've built a team around this sort of semi-moneyball approach. It's safe to call the Carolina Hurricanes the Oakland A's of the National Hockey League for sure. Montreal. A lot of rumors about Jonathan Drouin. I love Max Domi. Great year last year. Obviously, they need some more defensive help. Shea Weber's not getting any younger, but you have Carey Price. If he stays healthy, the Canadians will be competitive for sure. Let's look at the St. Louis Blues. Can they go back? Let's see what happens with Jordan Binnington. He was unshakable last year. Nothing bothered him whatsoever. How does he take his second season, his first full with the St. Louis Blues? We'll have to see. Jordan Binnington, I'm going to be watching the first 15 games or so. Phil Kessel, can he be the guy that puts the Arizona Coyotes over the top? We talk about teams like the Florida Panthers that have been looking to finally make their jump and finally make their moves. John Chaika over there in Arizona has been quietly building a nice little core of players together. Clayton Keller is an all-star. I don't think Derek Stepan is a first-line center, but you got Nick Schmaltz, who's a decent second-line center. Christian Dvorak, Carl Soderberg. You got some guys that are interesting to watch. Michael Grabner and his speed. He's always good for 20 goals, sometimes more if he's having a good season and getting a lot of playing time. Everybody loves Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and I think one of the more underrated goaltenders in the league is Antti Raanta. The guy's stats are off the charts. His name isn't worth a damn. Nobody cares about Antti Raanta. It's not flashy. It's terrible. I think his value, his worth, his pizzazz is zilch. His stats are amazing. And I like him a lot. And I think that Arizona is going to be in there and making some noise and challenging some people in that Pacific Division. Again, Calgary, Edmonton, big question marks. I think obviously Vegas and San Jose are going to finish pretty high. And I put Arizona, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton in that sort of question mark to fill out those 3, 4, and 5, and 6 spots over there in the Pacific Division. But I like Arizona, and I feel like people, because of ownership issues, have been, doubting them lately. But I don't know if they're worthy of that doubt. I don't know if they're worthy of that doubt. Metal Mike predicts Caps 1, Canes 2, Flyers 3, Isles 4, Devils 5, Penguins 6, Rangers 7, and Blue Jackets 8. You're not crazy. I think people will be tempted to put the Pens over the Devils and maybe even the Islanders. But, I don't know. I don't have a ton of faith in the Penguins. I don't have a ton of faith in Alex Galchenyuk. I have a lot of faith in Crosby and Malkin and Letang. Matt Murray's hurt. Can he be healthy? We got to wait and see. But I feel like the Penguins could fall off this year. I feel like this is their best chance to fall off. Where in years past, I always counted them in. This year, I'm not so sure. Another big question mark for me, the Buffalo Sabres and Ralph Kruger. Is this finally the year they kind of put it all together? Does Kyle Okposo finally go out and earn his $6 million? First-time coach. I think you get a little flexibility with the Buffalo Sabres, but I'm not picking them to finish in the playoffs. I don't know. Jamie Benn fell off a little bit last year, 79 points to 56 points. Not great for them. Lights called out Ben and Sagan. A lot of off-ice issues. I don't love it. But Joe Pavelski, Corey Perry was a bargain bin signing. Miro Heiskanen, take another step there. I like the Dallas Stars. I like the Dallas Stars a lot. Let me throw this name by you here. Alex Lafreniere. He will be the next Taylor Hall, Connor McDavid, John Tavares. He's going to be the guy. He's going to be the Jack Hughes of this upcoming draft. A lot of people looking at Alex. He'll be the name that once teams start to drop off, they'll be going, is this team tanking to get Alex Lafreniere? So good that you hear it here. Winnipeg and their defense. Where's Dustin Byfuglien at? Can Paul Maurice work his magic and get the most out of this roster? Can they fix the Patrick Laine situation? That's going to be certainly a storyline. Hughes brothers are going to be a storyline. You got Quinn Hughes over there in Vancouver. Can he help the Canucks get into a playoff spot? Jack Hughes in New Jersey. A lot of people, think he'll be Calder Trophy winner. Let's see. Can Malkin rebound this year for the Pittsburgh Penguins? I mean, he's going to have to have a big year. And maybe he does. Maybe Malkin not having to share the puck with a Phil Kessel as much. Maybe Galchenyuk taking a little bit more of a back seat. Maybe that brings out a little bit more of Evgeny Malkin and he gets his numbers back up again. I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see. Alex Ovechkin says he is pondering retirement come the end of his contract at 2021. I think that puts a lot of pressure on the Washington Capitals this year. Artemi Panarin is going to get a lot of flack because I don't think the Rangers are going to finish in the playoffs. And when you sign the free agent and you add a number 2 pick, arguably a number 1 pick in Capo Caco, people are going to have a lot of big expectations on you. Again, I think Henrik Lundqvist can get him there. It is possible. But I don't love the Rangers to finish in a playoff spot. I'm sorry. I think that we're going to be here this time next year talking about how dangerous the Rangers are. You know what I mean? The way the way I'm favorably talking about the Devils is how we're going to be talking about the Rangers if they go out and continue to add, if they draft well, if they add another free agent, which they obviously have the wallet to. I think the Rangers can be so dangerous next year, not this year. God love the Toronto Maple Leafs if they don't get off to a good start. You will not hear the end of the fire Mike Babcock rumors. Rasmus Sandin comes in and earns a spot. Nobody really saw that coming. So again, the back end is going to be a point of contention for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But a lot of people make a big deal about, Barry being here on a 1-year deal and him being out next season. Well, if this Rasmus Sandin comes in and has a good year, you'll have him on an ELC, and you won't really care about Barry leaving the following season. So we got to see. Where are we at with the Edmonton Oilers? I like bringing in, the general manager. I like the stability. Ken Holland is tremendous. I feel like he went out and hired the right guy in Tippett. You want to get, the best player in the game, the best people around him. But let's be honest, there's still plenty of holes in this Edmonton Oiler roster. You're counting on James Neal to rebound, which I think he will. But outside of Nugent Hopkins, I feel like the Edmonton Oilers are 2 lines. I just don't love their bottom 6. Alex Chason's not bad. I don't know any of the other guys, to be honest with you. Their defense, I like Larson, I like Nurse. Clefbaum's serviceable. Outside of that, where are they going to be at? And, can Mike Smith give them the goaltending? And if he can, for how long? Mikko Koskinen's a mistake. They got to figure out their goaltending there for sure. Edmonton's a tough story. That's what Metal Mike just said. And I agree. I really, really agree. And Ottawa is still a dumpster fire for sure. Ottawa is if there's one thing we could agree on, Ottawa, the LA Kings, are going to be fighting it out for Alex Lafreniere for sure. For sure. Those guys are going to finish out at the bottom. But if I had to sit here and I had to pick, if you're going to make me pick playoff spots in the Pacific, give me Vegas, give me San Jose. Man, I'm going to regret this. These are going to be the regrettable ones. I just don't know who I love more, Calgary or Edmonton, which is so poetic because they literally swapped one problem for the other with each other. And it just, it doesn't make you feel great. I don't know. I feel like the Calgary offense is a bit more exciting. They were able to get Kachuk under contract. That's a big deal. Gaudreau and Monahan. I certainly like their defense a little bit better. I don't have a ton of confidence in their goaltending. God, I don't know. That's tough. You know what I'm going to do for argument's sake? Let's have a hot take here. Let's cause some controversy. Give me Vegas, San Jose, and the Arizona Coyotes to finish 1, 2, and 3 in the Pacific. In the Central, give me St. Louis. Give me Nashville. Give me the Dallas Stars. Winnipeg will fall off a bit. They'll struggle. Don't hold me to any of these. In the Atlantic Division, give me Tampa, Toronto, and Boston. Give me Tampa, Boston, Toronto to finish in that order. Although I wouldn't be surprised if Toronto winds up finishing better than Boston. They'll still wind up losing to them for sure in the first round, but still, it'll be fun to watch them finish before them in the standings. I'm half kidding, guys. And in the East, give me the Caps. Give me. God, it's so hard to put your name on Carolina. I love their game so much. I think the Islanders are going to be there again. I mean, you're icing essentially the same exact team with the same exact coach. Give me the Caps. Give me the Islanders. You know, it's hard because Carter Hart is such a, can he carry it the whole year? I love the Devils. Corey Schneider's the question mark there. Pittsburgh, I see a fall off. Give me the Caps. Give me the Islanders. Give me the New Jersey Devils. Man, I don't feel comfortable with any of these picks. Not a one of them. Not a one. All right, that's our predictions for the 2019-2020 season. Good episode 4. Make sure you guys are subscribed on the YouTube page. Again, if you watch on Facebook or wherever you consume the show, even on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or Spotify, make sure you head on over to the Hockey Talk Show YouTube channel. You can get to it from hockeytalkshow.com and hit that subscribe button. Trying to up our numbers over there on the YouTube page. And make sure you guys are telling your hockey friends about the Hockey Talk Show. It is the only two-way talk show on the web. Everything else is pre-taped. You can't interact directly with the host. On this show, you can. And this is also the only show on the internet to have a playoff beard at the start of the season. That's pretty gangster. Enjoy opening night, everybody. We will see you on the next episode.